an Israeli that lives in the country what it's like for them. So Ronnie has been our tour guide for 10 years, maybe? About, at least 10 years. And I was there personally with Ronnie in 2017 as well as 2022. And he serves as an excellent guide in teaching and showing us, telling us the things that we need to hear that are important for us to understand the country, the culture, the politics, all of that. So let's start with prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Ronnie. Father God, we are so thankful, Lord, that we can be here in peace tonight. We're thankful, God, that you are our Father and that you never leave us, you never forsake us. We're thankful, God, that we can learn from others about Israel and all that's happening there. And Lord, we pray for peace. Lord, your word tells us to do that. We pray for peace. Lord, we ask, God, that you would teach us tonight, that your spirit would move. And we pray this in Jesus' name, amen. So please welcome Ronnie Simon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for coming. I would like to thank Pastor Tom and Pastor Dwayne for the opportunity to be here and to share with you. Can you all hear me clear enough? All right, it's English with a funny accent. That's what you're going to hear tonight. I'll try to slow down to make myself understood, and you have a triple challenge tonight. Number one, to try to follow the information that will come on the screens, and I'm not a disciplined speaker, so I'm not always well synchronized with the screen. Number two, to get used to my accent. And number three, to try to follow the message. It's not going to be an easy one. Not for me to share and not for you to understand. It's going to be full of violence and full of bloodshed and full of massacre. I'm sorry. That's the message for tonight. And although it happens so far away, if you think that this is a local Middle Eastern problem, you're wrong. It's global. I think that you can no longer hide that. It happens from Iran to Yemen to Lebanon to Syria. Turkey is engaged. Egypt, everybody is drawn into that. And the world shows a lot of interest for a good reason. It is indeed a global issue. Israel tried to explain to the world that what the world thought is something that only the Middle East cares about, it will never happen in America, for example, is indeed much bigger than just the country and just the region. I think that nobody can ignore that anymore today. And therefore, the message you're going to hear from me today is, number one, to add the context, because there's so much disinformation out there and so much deception out there, we need to do some cleanup. Confusion serves everybody. And people that are not that motivated to study, you turn on the TV in the evening, you see something that happens in the Middle East, you're not going to check what happened. You do tell yourself, well, I cannot trust the media, so what can you trust? And if you want it or not, you're all drawn into the media, and that makes an impression, and the media doesn't have the time to give you the context always. My plan for this evening is to try to speak about the past and bring you to the present to understand how the things had evolved over the years. I'm not going to speak about the good guys, the bad guys. That's not the point, and I definitely don't want to add to the disinformation out there. Propaganda is not my plan. I cannot be totally objective, as you understand. After all, I belong to one party in the conflict. I'll try to stay as objective. Problem is, very easy for me to get emotional as well. Israel is a small country, 10 million people, geographically much smaller than America. We all know people, and therefore this is a personal experience to all of us. And what happens in Israel is unprecedented. It breaks our heart to pieces, especially the story of the hostages. And this is day 1 and 18, not 1 and 14. We are missing someplace in tunnels in Gaza, 136 hostages that we have no clue what happened to them. You need to understand that the prisoners of Hamas in our prisons are visited by doctors, by the lawyers. They can order food from outside. They can have academic education. They are almost free to do whatever they want. In our case, we have no clue what happens to hostages, and the Red Cross is not even willing to try to figure out what's going on. And you hear some frustration in my voice already. So we're going to bring in the big dilemmas of the nation, and number one will be indeed the hostages. That did not happen in world history ever. The closest we can come is, some of you may remember, the Boko Haram in Nigeria that abducted 22 Nigerian girls, and they were in custody for a while. and the whole world was alarmed by that. It doesn't look like 136 Israelis are bothering the world as much as those Nigerian girls, and I'm not criticizing. I'm only saying that the magnitude of what happened is so great and so large. It's really hard to digest for us Israelis and for other people as well. What happened in October 7th of 2023 did not happen ever in world history, let alone in Jewish history, and that should not happen to the state of Israel. We know tensions, we know wars, we know awareness, we are always on alert. How did that happen that for one day, 24 hours, nothing worked in Israel? Try to address that as well. But my point is to go step by step to try to cover this whole topic, and then we'll have a Q&A if anybody is interested, by all means. I'm not going to speak against Islam. I'm not a theologian, but I don't have to speak against Islam. It's enough to see what Muslims are doing to Muslims in the Middle East. For the last 13 years, what the media call the Arab Spring, how stupid of a name that is, forgive me for saying that, maybe the Muslim freezing winter, more than 1 million people were killed. Muslims are killing Muslims in the Middle East. That's all I have to know about religion. And if that's how they treat one another, go figure how they're going to treat me or you for that regard, because listen to their messages, listen to their agenda, they say it loud and clear. I'll give Hamas one credit, they don't hide their agenda. And they say it loud and clear in every language. We are going to kill all the Jews, all the Christians, Islam will dominate the world. If that's the message, you do understand what will be the outcomes of such a message. Look at a picture that looks like 4th of July and fireworks. These are not fireworks. We speak about the barrage of rockets launched from Gaza, and the Iron Dome rockets are waiting patiently to see which rocket is going to fall in the inhabited area. And if it does fall in the inhabited area, they're going to intercept that. Amazing to see such a picture, but this was a daily scene in the dark skies of Israel for the last 100 days. Almost every day that would be the scene. Right now, Hamas fired most of the rockets, so we no longer see that. But you do understand the way that people lived and under what threat we are running their daily life. And this is not new to us. We know how to handle with that. But again, this one moment in history that changed our destiny forever, Israel will never be the same. In fact, the whole region will never be the same, because we understand for the first time, we tried to coexist. Israel was offering one peace plan after the other. It was always turned down. We tried again and again and again, because we use a very healthy Western common sense. That's what happens when people disagree. You sit down to the table, you shake hands, you try to find a solution. How do you resolve with somebody who tells you, my mission is to kill you? What kind of common ground you have to try to negotiate anything? It took us a while to understand, because we project our image on our enemy's image, and we think that they think like we do, we have the same common sense, and we are going to deliver if we make an agreement. It wasn't working. Now we know, so for the first time, gloves are off. And this conflict can end only in one way, an overwhelming victory over Hamas, because the neighborhood is watching. And if Israel is not delivering, who knows under what pressure we'll be in the future, including your country as well. Make no mistakes. This is not a local issue. I think that you see the beginnings of it in your universities. Amazing to see what's going on. Keep in mind, for the last 15 years, Qatar had invested in your universities $4.7 billion. All right? And guess what comes with money? You decide the curriculum, you decide the professor. Don't be surprised that the whole generation of American good kids, American youth, are so indoctrinated to something that they find in these universities. They'll grow up, they'll have families, they'll go to work in Wall Street, I understand. But some of it will stay. So if you thought it happens over there, no, it happens everywhere, including Europe, and this is a wake-up call to many people as well. That will be the plan for today. Let me start with some basic data about the Gaza Strip. You all heard the name. I doubt if you know the dimensions of it, how small of a place that is. This is it. The Gaza Strip, about 25 miles long, between 4 to 5 miles wide or 8 miles wide, the most crowded place on the planet. 2.2 million people live in a very small area, predominantly refugees, and I have to explain that. When Israel was made a nation in 1948, we'll get to that in just a minute, many Arabs who lived in the country fled for their lives, and many of them went to Gaza, they went to Lebanon, other places. So most of the population who lives in Gaza today will be categorized by the UN as refugees. But keep in mind, the UN has an agency called UNRWA, and maybe you heard the name, which was specially formed for the Palestinian refugees. Quite amazing. Only 3 years after the Second World War came to an end, and 50 million refugees were wandering through Europe, They had their own agency. They settled everybody, rehabilitated everybody. The Palestinians had their own agency, and they did not rehabilitate not one refugee. All right? And they can inherit the position to the 5th generation. Refugees do not inherit their position, with one exception, the Palestinians. So the United Nations Relief and Welfare Agency, UNRWA, is the one that was in charge to rehabilitate Palestinian refugees. They don't do the job. The refugees are a tool which is used by the Arab countries to basically against Israel. We speak about a real tragedy, people that enjoy zero rights in these places, which are called Palestinian refugees, and these people became refugees because of a reason that I'll touch on a little later on. So that'll be the Gaza area, and since 2007, the Gaza Strip is basically governed by Hamas unemployment way over 50%. It's 50% because Israel had given 18,000 working permits for Palestinians from Gaza to come and work in Israel. If he had not done that, unemployment will be more than 80%. All right, so these people that came to work in Israel spied on us and led the attack of October 7th. We fed them, their families. Basically, they came to work, but also to spy, and they were the masterminds behind the attack itself, knowing how the communities look like, knowing the people. So that's how it happened, and the details are important. Here is a short history of the Gaza Strip, 1949 to 1967. It was in the hands of the Egyptians. 1967, Israel conquered the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt in the Six-Day War. It was in our hands until 1995. We gave it to the Palestinian autonomy, Yasser Arafat, some of you remember the name. And then we pulled out from the rest of Gaza, and Hamas took over the place from 2007. That will be the story, basically with some nuances along the way that we're going to speak about in just a minute. I'm taking you back, therefore, to 1947. In 1947, something happened in the region. These were the years after the Second World War. Great Britain had a mandate over Palestine given to them by the League of Nations in 1917, and Great Britain ended up the war as a victor but lost the empire. They decided to leave the main possessions around the world, India, Sri Lanka or Ceylon, Palestine, and they understand that if they are leaving the land of Palestine, as it was, two people fight for the land, the Jews and the Arabs, it will lead to a total bloodbath. Great Britain was asking the United Nations, that were just born in April 1st of 1945, to try to find a solution to what may happen after the mandate will come to an end. And the UN sent a team over, a team of 11 members, and that team, in good faith, tried to meet with Arab leaders, Jewish leaders, bring them to some kind of a conference to try to find a peaceful solution. Arab leaders decided not to show up because their position was the land is Muslim. The Jews have no rights in it whatsoever. And once Great Britain is leaving, the Arab armies are going to throw the Jews into the ocean. The Jewish leaders were very interested because whatever the world had to offer for a homeland for the Jews after losing 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust, we could not say no. So the team of 11 members tried to get the parties to the table, but that was in vain. And they decided that the only way to end this conflict peacefully after the British mandate will terminate is to divide the land into two. There will be a homeland for the Jews and there will be a homeland for the Arabs, and maybe that will lead to some kind of a peaceful solution in the region. That was the plan basically. The land we divided about 50-50. You do see the Jewish area will be the purplish and the rest of it will be the Arab area. Most of this is a Negev desert. Nobody lives down here. That was supposed to be the plan. The plan also stated that Jerusalem will be an international city. It's so important to the world to be a capital of one entity. It will remain in the hands of the UN, will be governed by an international tribunal. It will not be the capital, not of the future Jewish state and not of the future Arab state. That was the idea. It sounds like it's going to work. And for that reason, they brought it to the General Assembly, and they voted for it on the 29th of November 1947, and based on the UN resolution, Resolution 181, 2 countries are born, one for the Jews, one for the Arabs, hallelujah. Being cynical to say hallelujah because it wasn't really working. So when the British mandate came to an end, and that was Friday, the 14th of May 1948, Israel's Day of Independence, the Arabs, the losing side, calls it a disaster. After the British mandate came to an end, 7 Arab armies invaded into Israel's territory. The Egyptians and the Jordanians and the Syrians and the Lebanese and the Iraqis. We don't even share a border with Iraq. And 2 expeditionary forces from Sudan and from Morocco. We don't share a border with these 2 countries. You do know how the war ended. Israel did prevail. There is a national home for the Jewish people. The question is, what about the other country that the UN spoke about, the Arab Palestinian state? How come there is no such state today? If you do not know your history, and I would ask you the question, some of you will give me an answer. Let me tell you what, you're wrong. Your answer will be the Palestinian state wasn't born because you, the Jews, conquered the territory. And because of Israel's victory in 1948, they don't have a country. That's a mistake. It's a big mistake, and please stay with me. Here is the plan, basically. That's how it started. 2 countries for 2 people. As the Arab armies invaded Israel, losing the war, that's what was left in their hand, the brown areas. We conquered from the land allocated to them quite a lot of territory. For example, all of Galilee and parts of the Negev desert. But when the war was over, these are the new borders. That will be Arab land, this will be Arab land, and this will be the state of Israel. When you look at the brown area over there, it says Samaria and Judea. That's what the West Bank is all about. The West Bank is the West Bank of the River Jordan. Always amuses me when you check with those demonstrators what sea and what river, they don't have a clue. But let me tell you, the river is the River Jordan, and this will be the West Bank area, the heartland of biblical Israel. Judea and Samaria is known today politically as the West Bank of the River Jordan. Now this was in Arab hands because the king of Jordan that came to help his brothers, the Palestinians, during the war, occupied quite a big area. And after the war was over, he refused to pull out his forces. He came to help the Palestinians. He came to free the land, basically, give it to them, and go back to his kingdom. He refused. And the Jordanian army was deployed in the land that was allocated by the UN for the Palestinian state. The king of Jordan said, I like it here, I'm staying. In fact, the West Bank was annexed to Jordan by King Abdullah. It became to be Jordanian territory and not the Palestinian state as it was supposed to be by the UN proposition. Same thing happened in Egypt. That's Egypt. The Egyptian army came seemingly to help the Palestinians, losing all that territory to the Israeli army. And when the armistice was signed with Egypt in April of 1949, that's what was left in Egyptian hands. They were supposed to pull out and hand it over to the Palestinians for statehood. That's why they came. They came to help them to gain a state. Egypt decided, we are staying. And therefore, the Palestinian state wasn't born, not because of Israel. This was supposed to be part of the Palestinian state, and this one as well. Had the king of Jordan pulled back, had the Egyptian army withdrew from the Gaza Strip, there would be today a Palestine, and maybe the conflict was on a totally different level. So the Palestinian state wasn't born not because of Israel. It wasn't born because the Jordanians and the Egyptians took the land, stole the land, robbed the land. You choose the term. And for that reason, there is no Palestine until this very day. When people speak about Palestine, it's a sentiment. There is no such entity. No Palestinian passports and no Palestinian currency. There is no such a country. By the way, never was. Palestine was always a province in much bigger empires. There was never in the past an entity called Palestine. So when people say we want to give the land back to the Palestinians, what back? It was never really theirs. You do understand part of the problem that we are dealing with. People do not know the facts. And I'm challenging you, don't trust me. You go and check, all right? I cannot be trusted. I have an agenda. Please check the facts. The facts are very clear to check. So when somebody calls himself a Palestinian, he speaks about somebody who is an Arab, who lives in a place called Palestine, but there is no such an entity with clear borders, let alone an independence ever in the past. Golda Meir said once, our prime minister, who is a Palestinian? I live in a place called Palestine. I'm a Palestinian. It was not an ethnic term. It was not a national one. It was a geographic one. I do not know the name of the county that you all live in, but it's the name of a county, not the name of your nationality and not your religion. Am I right? Same idea. So we do speak about not having a Palestinian state because of Jordan and because of Egypt. Let's go back now to the chart. Here we are, from 1949 to 1967. That will be now Gaza Strip in Egyptian hands. The world is accusing us, Israel, for apartheid. Well, when I get into these debates, I'm asking people, give an example. You say that Israel is an apartheid state, give me an example. Let me tell you what. Arabs in Israel are Israelis. They can vote, they can be elected, all the positions are open to them, they can live anywhere they want. We do have parties in the parliament, we do have in the Supreme Court chief justices who are Arabs, they are part of Israel, they are Israelis like all the others. So what kind of an apartheid the world is talking about? Let me show you apartheid. When Egypt basically controlled this area until 1967, they controlled the area that was inhabited by Palestinian refugees who enjoyed zero rights. They did not have a citizenship. They could not travel anywhere. They had very poor education. The only thing that the Egyptians gave them was weapons and quite a lot. Carry on the struggle against Israel. But we don't speak about any way to treat them in a decent way. That would be apartheid. Palestinian refugees in Lebanon today are not treated like Lebanese. They're not Lebanese. They live like second-class citizens. They don't enjoy any rights in Lebanon or in Syria or in Kuwait or in Iraq. The only country who accommodated those refugees and gave them citizenship is Jordan. But why become a refugee? Well, because in 1948, when the war started, 1948, the Arab nation leaders extended an invitation. We have it on radio, we have it in documents. We, the Arab armies, are going to invade Israel. Our mighty armies are going to throw the Jews into the ocean. Come and take shelter in our countries, just for the time being. Once we are done, you go back home to take their homes, which are much nicer. 85% of people who are called refugees left their homes before the war even started. And those that live closer to Gaza went to Gaza. Those that live closer to Lebanon went to Lebanon, Syria, etc. We speak about more than 5 million refugees today, and this is part of the tragedy. We speak about people that have no rights in any of these countries except Jordan, and the population is growing. So when you have a group like UNRWA that pays them a monthly salary, which is more than they can make working in the area, why work? So you're going to keep that condition of a refugee forever. If you keep supporting them with money, there's no motivation to go to work. There's no motivation to get a life, basically. So if you're bored all day long and you go to the mosque and you hear those inflammatory speeches against Israel, you understand the outcomes of that. So Gaza area basically is filled with 85% of people that their ancestors fled from what will be Israel to take shelter invited by the Egyptians. Well, they lost the war. They're not coming back home. But these are the refugees of today, and that's how they were treated by the Egyptians in Lebanon until this very day, other places as well. So to speak about apartheid, you go to Egypt and you learn apartheid. Go to Lebanon, that's apartheid. Not in Israel. Israeli Arabs are Israeli just like me. There's only one exemption. They are not, or serving in the army is not mandatory for them. It can be for the Jewish population. Arabs can volunteer. And some do, but most of them do not. That's the only example I can give you that you may say that we don't have equal rights. If you want to volunteer, volunteer, but it's not mandatory. So that's about the Arabs that live in the state of Israel. 1967, Israel took the place, and Gaza was in our hands until 1995. Until 1967, the lifespan in Gaza was 48 years. Today, 78. We did that. We built the hospitals and the clinics. Infant mortality in Gaza was 55 infants to 1,000 children, the highest in the world. Now it's down to 6, the lowest in the Arab world. We did that because they accuse us for committing genocide. That's not the way to commit genocide. To bring in food and pharmaceutics and fuel and take care about the population. And these are not data that are brought from Israel. United Nations, international research organizations. If you're really interested, don't trust anything I'm telling you. Go and study. And then I'm more than happy to receive your emails. You lied to us about that and that and that. I'm not. These are the facts. So please go and check. So we do speak about Gaza under a whole new era. Meanwhile, we made peace with the Egyptians. In 1979, Israel and Egypt made peace. And as we pulled out from the Sinai to give it back to the Egyptians, we begged them, take Gaza with you. It was in your hands until 1967. We don't want Gaza, take it with you. The Egyptians very cleverly said, President Sadat, you stick with Gaza, we don't want Gaza. So now we have a piece of property which is inhabited by close to 1.5 million people back at the time. Egypt doesn't want, Israel definitely doesn't want, and people who live there. In 1988, a few years earlier, the king of Jordan, Hussein, had made a confession. His grandfather, King Abdullah, that occupied the West Bank, made a mistake. It was illegal. And therefore, he relinquishes any demand for the West Bank. Israel doesn't want it either. Now we know what's on the table. The West Bank on one side, the Gaza Strip on the other side, the Jordan don't want, the Egyptians don't want, Israel doesn't want. At least we can talk about some kind of negotiations. Maybe this land will be given to somebody. I know it sounds amazing to you, but please check. Until 1988, nobody in the world spoke about the Palestinians as a nation, let alone right to a land. You won't find it. Because if you say that the West Bank is Palestinian land, you're defeating Jordan's purpose. It was Jordanian until then. And to show Arab solidarity was more important than to speak about the facts. Nobody in the world spoke about a nation has a right to a land. That will only happen when Israel negotiated with Egypt. Prime Minister Menachem Begin, a very hard liner, said, Mr. President, to the Egyptian president, what can we do to help the Palestinians? It wasn't an Egyptian initiative, it was ours. So until 1988, there were no discussions about what should happen with these people. The West Bank, there were Jordanians. In Gaza, there were semi-Egyptians. Nobody spoke about the right for a land. I know it sounds amazing. Only 40 years ago. It looks like it was always an issue from biblical days. You are wrong. It's a new issue on the world history. So now we know what's at stake, and we know the land that nobody wants. And now we speak about some negotiations. Yitzhak Rabin, an Israeli prime minister, initiated peace talks with the Palestinians. It started in Oslo, the Norwegian capital, and then it surfaced and went to Washington, D.C. And after a few years of negotiations, on the 13th of September 1993 in the White House, President Clinton was hosting Menachem Begin on one side, Yitzhak Rabin, then Yasser Arafat. They shook hands. Another hallelujah. Common sense prevails. It's going to be peace. It's good for everybody. And here's the formula. Israel is going to pull out gradually from the West Bank and Gaza, give it to the Palestinians, so they can try to live a national way of life and to see if they can deliver. All we wanted in return was stop the instigation in your schools, collect the illegal weapons. We're going to give you more land the more you deliver. That was the deal. In 5 years, it said, we are going to bring that to conclusion. We spoke about an autonomy for the Palestinians, not a state, an autonomy. And we pulled out. We pulled out from areas and gave it to the Palestinians. For example, pulling out from the Gaza area. Israel pulled out from, here we are, most of Gaza that was given to the Palestinians. We kept an enclave down here with 18 small communities and some other pockets. But most of the land was given to the Palestinians so they can start and live the national life, to prove that they can deliver what they promised to deliver. It wasn't working. It wasn't working for day one. There's a few reasons. The Palestinians of Gaza has a border with Egypt. And through the Egyptian border, lots of weapons and ammunition and everything that you don't expect to find in a partner that you talk peace to made their way into the Gaza area. But for a while, it looks like everything is going to work well. We speak about a new airport that was built in Gaza, a new harbor, lots of investments, hotels, holiday villages. It looked like it's going to work because it makes sense. It's good for everybody. And then we started getting fired by rockets and then bombs in the Israeli communities, one after the other. When an Israeli kid wanted to leave his home and to visit his friend in the nearby neighborhood, the car had to be escorted by a tank and had helicopter gunship. People that commuted to go to work every day were fired at and killed on the roads. And we are partners, remember? We decided to make some kind of a solution here. It wasn't really working, but still, we were hoping that it's only the beginning of it. Will take some time to Mr. Arafat to get his forces together There is an opposition over there. He has some problems as well. We need to help him. We helped him with even weapons that they were using later on against us. So between 1995 to 2005, it was in the hands of the Palestinian Authority. And in 2005, Israel decided that we are going to leave all of the Gaza area and give it over to the Palestinians. It was during the days of a prime minister called Ariel Sharon. We'll get to him in just a minute. Meanwhile, we speak about rockets that started flying from Gaza City into Israeli communities. First one, April 16, 2001. In my country, for the last 23 years, in communities along the Gaza border, that's how people live their lives. Every now and then, somebody can fire a rocket into your town. You have 8 seconds, 8 seconds, 8 seconds to go to the bomb shelter. You never make it in 8 seconds. We have sirens that go off. And if you don't make it to the bomb shelter, just lay flat on the ground and pray. And what time they usually fire the rockets? 7:45 a.m. What happens 7:45 a.m.? Kids go to school, right? Well, the town of Sderot, which is one of the main towns, every 50 yards there is a concrete cube, which is a bomb shelter basically. And these kids were supposed to run to these and find shelter. You can't run 50 yards in 8 seconds if you are carrying a big bag full of books on your back and you're 6 years old. So they know. You lay flat on the ground and you pray. Who lives like that? Give me one example of a country which is strong enough to take out its enemies, who is willing to live like that. What would happen in this country if somebody will fire from Tijuana into San Diego? I think that you understand the answer. But still we thought it may work. It may work, and for that reason our retaliation was very mild. But things were getting worse and worse. And then in 2005, Mr. Sharon, very hardliner, said, you know what? The world wants us to appease the Palestinians. The world wants us to leave the Gaza area, and once we pull out, it will have to bring peace to the region. In other words, they don't have any demands anymore. That's what they want. All right, we're going to pull out, and now we'll see what will happen. Israel decided, which was a unilateral decision, was a mistake, it wasn't through negotiations, to leave the area. And we did. From September 11, 2005, not a single Israeli is in the Gaza area, not even one. So when you see people holding those banners, free Gaza from whom? We are no longer in Gaza. We provide them with everything they need. You show me another case in world history that two entities were in some kind of a conflict and one supplied the other with medications and food and fuel. There was no such example because we tried to distinguish, if possible, between the good guys in Gaza and the terrorists. How do you do that? They don't wear uniforms. How do you know if somebody is an enemy or just an innocent man that goes to his daily job? Is there a way to tell? That's the definition of terror. You have no idea who are your targets, where to find them, because they're using civilians as the first line of fire. So that was evolving over the years. At first we thought, well, it's going to help, it's going to work, because it's good for everybody. And then you understand, well, they don't really try even to keep their part of the promise, but by now we gave them so much land, are we going to take it back? Or maybe there was a way to resolve somehow? 5 times Israel presented a peace plan. Nobody else did, just us. 5 times it was turned down without even presenting a counteroffer. Our minimum, our maximum, didn't meet our minimum. And we understood something. It was never about 2 countries live side by side. It's us or them. If that's a choice, it's us. But it took us some time to understand what is it that we are dealing with. So we pulled out 2005. The problem is that Egypt has tunnels that go into Gaza, and the plan was that we are going to pull out from Gaza, and you, Egypt, which are peace with us, you are going to basically seal all those tunnels so nothing will go into Gaza, at least unless we screen it, we know what's going in. The Egyptians did part of the promise, but not all of it, because today what we find in Gaza as we fight deeper and deeper in Gaza is not locally made weapons. We find standard weapons, ammunition, mines, rockets, everything came in. How did it go in when we controlled the borders? Everything came through the tunnels from Egypt. So Egypt is now a problem as well, and not an asset as we thought it's going to be. Because if we are going to finish off Hamas, and we will take some time. And the Egyptians will not keep their part of the border, will wake up in 10 years to the same situation, which means accomplishing nothing. And by the way, when the world says you Israelis are responsible, you have to keep Gaza alive. Why? Egypt has a border. Let the Egyptians feed their brothers and sisters. Why does the world expect us, all right, that they tell us they're going to kill us, to keep Gaza alive, and there's no such pressure on the Egyptians? The Egyptians are the brothers. Send money in, send food in. Nobody demands Egypt to do that, just Israel. Since you are controlling the borders, yes, part of it, but Egypt also controls part of the border. How come the Egyptians are not responsible to anything that happens in Gaza? You don't understand my question. So 2005, we are out, and soon after that, they have elections in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. It was in the days of Ms. Condoleezza Rice, Secretary of State. The U.S. was deeply involved in us putting out, and they wanted to show the world that Arab democracy is possible. Keep in mind, there is no such an entity. All right, there was never an Arab democracy. There was one, Lebanon, and that led to their demise almost totally. So it was important to the U.S. to show the world that Arabs can live in a democracy. It's going to be elections. People are going to speak, and this is going to work. So the U.S. was sponsoring and was controlling the whole process. Inspectors came from all around the world to watch that the procedure or the procedure is legit and nobody cheating and the ballots are in order. The Palestinians had spoken. And we told Ms. Rice, listen, if you let Hamas run, Hamas may win the elections and this will be a totally different ballgame. And she said, well, it's democracy. Anybody can run and let the people decide who's going to govern them. Guess who won? Hamas and the Salafists big time. 75% of the vote went to Hamas. Now, I think that people knew what they were voting for because Hamas has a charter. I urge you to go and read it, all right? Go to the Charter of Hamas, November 1988, and you learn the whole story, what Hamas is all about. So we have Hamas's victory now. The PLO, the leaders, were quite shocked when that happened. They refused to surrender the power, which led to a civil war. And when these two groups were a civil war, PLO officials and people were thrown from high-rises tops in Gaza. Until today, hundreds of them are moving around in wheelchair because somebody put a bullet in the kneecap. That's how they treat one another, the Palestinian brothers. And therefore, the elections in Gaza did not produce anything but more chaos and a split and division among the Palestinians. And today, the map looks like the following. The PLO is controlling the West Bank, and Hamas is controlling the Gaza area, and they did not have any elections ever since. If they will have free elections once again, guess who will win the West Bank? Hamas almost know that. They took a poll about a month ago. 82% of Palestinians are supporting Hamas and their attack in October 7th. Are there good people in Gaza? I don't know. Maybe there are. If there are, I don't know. Because the question is everybody like Hamas? Can we make a distinction between the good guys and the bad guys? I have no idea how to answer the question. If there are good guys in Gaza, I want to see them. They need somehow to demonstrate the will to live in peace. By the way, did you ever see, ever, around the world, an Arab rally for peace? Thank you. You need to understand that. Islam, ever since the religion was born, is a state of war with everybody. That's what jihad is all about. To conquer more land to Islam. All right? Did you ever see a demonstration led by the Arab which was a peaceful one? You don't see it either. And we need to understand that kind of mindset because in America, you can't talk like that. You have to be PC. Well, I'm not from America. And maybe we don't need to talk about PC all the time. The truth is there. And by using political correctness, we try to ignore a lot of things which are important, critical, matters of life and death. In my country, it happened already. It will happen other places unless we stop them. And therefore, we speak about something which is absolutely vital to understand. So now there's a new situation that Hamas is controlling the Gaza Strip and the PLO is controlling the West Bank, and these two are not in good terms, to say the least. So we have a people, and the 5 million people call themselves a nation. Who am I to tell them that they are not? And they are divided into two, because once the world wants us to negotiate with the Palestinians, who represents the Palestinians? You understand my question? Right now, nobody. In the West Bank, the leader, the president, 87 years old, Mahmoud Abbas, is technically the president, but he's not representing half of his people. Can he deliver? Are we going to reach an agreement? He cannot deliver. To be honest with you, under the circumstances now in my country, we have a government that cannot deliver any kind of peace talks as well. The two parties are getting more extreme in a way. So right now it looks like a dead end. But the world wants us to negotiate. With whom? President Bush came to the scene in the 22nd of June 2002 and delivered the message, it was always America's will to see a two-state solution. It wasn't until he said it so loud and clear. Israel said, we'll take it, knowing that the Palestinians cannot deliver because they are divided into two. So who represents the Palestinians? First, resolve your issues with our position, and then send one team to the table, and that team better deliver. Otherwise, we are not negotiating. So that split among the Palestinians served Israel as well. It was a classical divide and conquer. I hate to admit that, but Hamas was founded with our support to undermine the position of the PLO. We want to create that kind of rift. Big mistake. For a while we thought, this is so clever politics, right? If they don't get together, the world is not demanding us to negotiate. Let's encourage that split. So we are part of the reason behind Hamas to underestimate the position of the PLO as the only leader of the Palestinians. By the way, the PLO is a group that faces on politics, the Palestine Liberation Organization. Hamas is a group that faces on religion, not on politics. Hamas aspires to have a caliphate, just like ISIS. The PLO wants a Palestinian state. Hamas doesn't want a Palestinian state. They want a caliphate where one caliph is ruling all of the Muslim world. It's a totally different view. When it comes to politics, we can reason. It comes to religion, it's at that end. Nobody can negotiate in behalf of his God because your God did not authorize you to make concessions in his behalf. So what kind of talks we are going to have? You do understand the dead end here. It's not going to work. Never did in the past. Not going to work now as well. So that was the 2005 fiasco, so to speak. And for 2007, Hamas is indeed the group that governs the Gaza area. And I do want to make a comment, if I may. Many people compare Hamas to ISIS. Not the same. Number one, Hamas came first. ISIS executed the ideas of Hamas. You go and read the book of the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, a man by the name of Muhammad al-Banna from 1934. It's Hitler's Mein Kampf in Arabic. So the ideas are there of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood Palestine. So the ideas were there for ISIS to execute later on. But keep in mind, ISIS were foreigners that came from other areas, conquered a huge place in northern Iraq and Syria against the will of the locals, controlled them with terror, not in the Gaza Strip. Hamas is the product of Gaza. Gaza was the one that gave birth to Hamas, the same ideas. They're not foreigners. These are the locals. So this was born basically among the locals and not something that was imposed from the outside, which is important to know. The world was kind of astonished by the beheadings of ISIS, etc. Well, these guys are not falling short behind them. They're much worse. Well, here is Hamas, and let's get to know this group of people. We speak about the Palestinian Muslim fanatic terror group. Forget about the Palestinian. Muslim Arab. They don't care about Palestine. They care about Islam as a religion. They want to be part of world jihad, obviously. Some of you may remember that when ISIS was still very powerful, there was one of those ISIS terrorists standing someplace in northern Syria, spreaded his legs and says, this one is in Iraq, this one is in Syria. The border here was made by foreigners, by Christians, in the aftermath of WW1, and he did like that. No borders, one caliphate, one Muslim world. That's what these guys aspire to have, all right? Which is a legitimate ideology, if you ask me, unless you really try to execute what you really believe in. But that's what they believe in. They're using the local population to say it loud and clear. A Hamas leader was asked about a month ago, how come you dug all those tunnels, 400 miles of tunnels, and you don't let the civilians to use them? He said, well, the civilians are refugees, the UN cares about them, we don't care about them. Well, freedom fighters of whom? Who are you helping if you don't care about your civilians? What kind of an ideology is that? They voted for you to give them decent life, to protect them, and that will be the way to treat the population. We need to understand the kind of sentiment. Read Article 13 in the Charter of Hamas. I'll tell you an idea at least about what this group believes in. And you understand, what's the point in talking, negotiating, not going to work? There's only one way to resolve the issue, and that's by jihad, which means by killing all the Jews, and the Christians as well, by the way. You're not exempt when it comes to the ideology of Hamas. And if you read just the red letters, if you may, of the Article 28, we cannot fail to remind every Muslim that when the Jews occupied Holy Jerusalem in 1967 and stood at the doorstep of the blessed Aqsa Mosque, they shouted with joy, Muhammad is dead, he left daughters behind, blah, 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 forgive me for the blah, blah, blah. What exactly they're insinuating? That Israeli soldiers are going to rape Muslim women, the daughters of Muhammad? What kind of a mindset that is? Somebody did a thesis in the Hebrew University. Her question was, how come Israeli soldiers don't rape Palestinian women, as if it's a legitimate outcome of war? But we don't have such cases. And her answer was not because the Jewish moral and the Jewish principle forbids because it's wrong. Her answer was because they hate them so much, they won't even touch the women. Who thinks like that? What kind of an evil mindset will produce such a thesis to be supported by the EU with money? Everybody praised her. What a great job you did. Without asking a single Israeli soldier, how come so you did not rape this beautiful woman over there? What kind of an idea is that? Well, speaking about Hamas, that's a mindset that I do not understand. I hope that you do not understand either. That's how Hamas operates. Civilians are the first line of defense. They do not protect civilians, civilians protect them. All the resources of Gaza are going to support Hamas. You know how much money was given by the world to the Gaza Strip? Billions of dollars. Not a single house was built, unless for Hamas lead a beautiful villa with a swimming pool when the others are hungry almost. Lots of money. Where's the money? Well, usually to dig tunnels. Qatar is giving the Palestinians in Gaza every month $30 million. We allow that. These are the payments for the officials. The rest of the money is dedicated to build tunnels and weapons, and Qatar knows that. They did not give the money not knowing how to use that. Qatar is the villain in the story. Iran is the mastermind of the Islam, the radical one, but the money is coming from Qatar. Qatar, the way we see that, as bad as Hamas. We need them now to be the mediators, to try to free the hostages. Qatar is a legitimate target, will be in the future for us at least. All the money that made October 7th possible is coming from Qatar. $4.7 billion to universities, which is part of the plan, all right, to spread around the Muslim views. That will be, therefore, the neighbors that we have on the other side of the Gaza Strip border. We did speak about that. It's amazing. Israel is providing medical care to anybody that has a need in Gaza. They cannot get treatment over there. They can come to hospitals. But Hamas sometimes is bombing or rocketing the border crossing. They don't want the people to go to Israel for hospitals, because they may see that the Jews are, hey, not that bad. They don't have horns, as we told you. They don't look like the devil. These are good people. You will defeat the purpose of Hamas. So Hamas is firing on people that go to the border to cross to Israel to be treated for cancer in the hospital of Beersheba, for example. Sometimes the rocket or the shoot on the trucks that carry food inside. You see that every day on TV, right? The world is sending food into Gaza. Who seizes that as it crosses the border? Hamas. Who cares about civilians? They're so spendable. Who cares about it? Part of the tragedy. Dead Palestinians is excellent for Hamas. Dead Palestinians very bad for Israel. Dead Israelis, excellent for Hamas. Dead Israelis, bad for Israel. You don't understand that equation. Who thinks like that? Who behaves like that? In the Western world, we just don't get it. But some people live a different way of life. They have a different motivation, a different mentality, way of thinking, way of operating, that I believe that all of us will find just impossible. It can even happen. Here are the leaders. Some of you know the faces or maybe the names. Mahmoud Abbas, president of the Palestinian Autonomy, 87 years old. He won't last for too long. He refuses to name his successor. Guess what will happen? We speak about people that are armed to their teeth, different militias, different tribes, families, clans. It's going to be a terrible civil war after this man will die. So he chooses not to nominate anybody to replace him. He is the moderate one, Holocaust denier that the world wants us to talk to him. Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza, Ismail Haniya and Khalid al-Mashal in Qatar, having fun in the pool, 5-star hotels. Their people are getting killed in the Gaza area. That's leadership. All right, that's how they demonstrate their leadership, not the kind of leadership that I would follow. But these are the masterminds behind the whole operation. Hamas is very strong also in the West Bank, very strong abroad. Turkey has some people that they are hosting over there. So they are active not just in the West Bank area, but other parts of the world as well. After Hamas occupied Gaza, so to speak, Israel started monitoring what goes into the Gaza area. The ships bringing the commodities will come to our harbor. We are screening the containers, and we send them in hoping that we know what's in these containers. But you do understand the problem. You're a farmer, you know that in order to produce fertilizers, there's a mix of all kinds of chemicals, etc. You can make great bombs out of them as well. All depends how they use those fertilizers. And if we won't let fertilizers in, they may starve to death. How cruel are you? So we let it in. And all kinds of chemicals and medications. So we are careful not to send in weapons, but besides that, anything can be used by them just to sustain their lives, including some ingredients they can make weapons out of, but there was a limit. What is it that we are sending in? But everything that Gaza has is coming from Israel. Now people tell me sometimes, you see, you're controlling Gaza. You have the power plant, and build the power plant. The world gave you so much money. Build a power plant. Build a desalinization plant. Get a life. You don't do that. You complain to the whole world that you are starving. You want us to send it, and we do. And you complain that we are controlling Gaza. The money was given. How did you use the money? Why not to build a state? Why not to build an economy? Well, since the world was accusing us that we are very wrong, we invited a group of journalists from Egypt, 2010, to come and visit the Gaza Strip, and that's the report they gave about the terrible conditions in Gaza. Not I wrote it, but Egyptian reporters that came to visit the terrible place called Gaza in 2010. So nothing was really lacking at the Gaza Strip area. And meanwhile, money was flowing in. It went to the wrong people to build tunnels, 400 miles of tunnels. The strongest fortified place in the world ever is the subterranean Gaza. It's not a city above ground, it's a city underground. And who was it built for? The commoners? You must be kidding. It was built for Hamas terrorists and the leaders. Hospitals, kindergartens, schools, UNRWA facilities. Everything was legit. Today when our troops are going into these homes, and they're just amazed to see more than 6,000 piers that go down to the metro, as we call it, under baby's crib. You just book the trip, a small narrow tunnel that goes down straight to the pier. Are there innocent people in Gaza? I have no idea. If 80% of the homes, we found something that connects them to the tunnels, I would say that there aren't that many innocent people in Gaza. Are there good people in Gaza? I don't know. When they carried the dead body of an Israeli girl to the streets of Gaza, and everybody is spitting and yelling and screaming and beating up, are there good people in Gaza? I have no idea. When Jews are getting killed, they give candies out in the streets of Gaza, and everybody's celebrating. Are there good people in Gaza? I don't know. Maybe there are. I want to see them. Because if not, everybody is a legitimate target. So that's what happened on the other side. Lots of rockets that were purchased. Israel made a big mistake, I have to say, and the Israeli public today that shows amazing solidarity like never before. We demand some answers, and we want our leadership to tell us what went wrong, because something went dead wrong. Prime Minister Netanyahu, I know that many people in America really admire the man, Israeli patriot, no doubt. Prime Minister for the last 15 years, way too long for anybody to be Prime Minister. Here, I give you my opinion. He had an idea The idea was that if Israel wants to be accommodated by the Arab countries in the Middle East, there was a way to do that. Until he came to power, the world was in the opinion that Israel has to resolve the problem with the Palestinians first, and after Israel and the future Palestine will live together side by side. That will draw the Saudis in, and the Sudanis, and all the others. Israel will be accepted by the Arab countries if we only resolve our issue with the Palestinians. Mr. Netanyahu said not so. If we can normalize our situation with the Arab countries in the area, like the Abraham Accords, that was a great success. Then the Arab countries are going to press the Palestinians to capitulate, and as they are much weaker now, they'll come to the table to try to find a solution. That was the idea. Which means that Netanyahu developed a whole new psyche, if you wish, that Hamas is an asset and not a liability. We wanted to create a situation that Hamas will have something to lose. What do you mean to lose? If the world wants them to be recognized as a government, you need to invest some money. You need to improve their lives. For that reason, we opened the gate for 18,000 people to come and work. You need to build an economy. They will have something to lose, and they will hesitate to attack us because they'll lose everything. That was the mindset. So once you hear a prime minister in Israel says that Hamas is an asset and the PLO is a liability, it may have looked for a while as a great idea. It was a terrible mistake that led to October 7th of 2023. We demand answers. We want to know what went wrong. Military personnel stepped forward the following day, said we had failed. Our mission was to protect civilians, we had failed. Not a single politician, not even one, stepped forward to take responsibility. That's very poor leadership. I'm not surprised. They are politicians. We demand answers. We face a catastrophe like never before. We speak about 1,400 Israelis, babies, elderly, women, soldiers, butchered, most of them in their beds in one day because somebody made a mistake in his diplomacy. We demand answers. And therefore, right now, we show solidarity. We have no illusion. After the war is over, the controversy within Israel will surface, and I'm more concerned about my people's well-being after the war is over than what happens now. Because I simply refuse to say one simple thing. I'm the leader, it was my mistake, let me win the war and I'll go home. You won't hear politicians speak like that. Admitting a mistake? God forbid. A politician? Never happened. Yes, they're being sarcastic. That's what we want. The failure in Israel has a face, has a name, has an address. Yes, I'm pointing a finger, and it's not me. You hear the tone among most Israelis today. We demand answers. This was a colossal failure that somebody designed in a way. He didn't mean that. That was the outcome of your policy. Pay the price. They don't even consider to pay the price. And I'm sorry to disappoint many of you, because I know that for many Americans, Mr. Netanyahu is a great hero. He was for a while a great politician, a real Israeli patriot. Not based on October 7th of 2023. Our problem was tunnels that Hamas was digging under the border. Our nightmare was they're going to come into those communities and to take hostages. And for that reason, we built one of the most sophisticated barriers in the world, a fence. Everybody speaks about a fence in this country as well. Here is a fence. All right? Look how great that looks like. There's a steel wall that goes about 100 feet under it. So digging tunnels under is impossible because the groundwater in Gaza is very high. They will be flooded. So you do have all the surveillance that you need, all the radars, drones in the air, machine guns and tanks everywhere. This border cannot be penetrated, infiltrated. What a big mistake that was, now we know. Meanwhile, from Egypt, stuff kept coming in. And still does today, by the way. Everybody gets a cut. The Egyptian officials, the Palestinian officials, and that will have to stop as well. So the tension between us and the Egyptians is rising all the time. You hear the different tone over the last few weeks. The tension is rising. And we are at peace in a way for many years now. You need to do your job. Stop the flow of weapons. And if not, we are going to seize the border crossing. We'll stop that. Oh, you cannot. It's a violation of the peace process. You don't understand the game here. So if we have to do something to break the peace process, but to make sure that nothing comes from Egypt into Gaza, we'll do that. The price will be rising tension. The whole world is going to get involved. How dare you? Enough. 1,400 graves in Israeli cemeteries is more than enough for how dare you. We do dare, and we're going to do that. We don't have any options, any choices. Told you, not a pleasant message today. Well, here is Hamas's deception. They did a great job, I have to say, to deceive us. We knew they have the motivation. We do not know if they have the capability. Remember the tunnels into Egypt? Through those tunnels, Hamas terrorists were going to Egypt by the thousands, flying to Damascus and Iran to be trained over there. A butterfly cannot fly in the Gaza Strip without us knowing that. But if you try to fly in the Buckeye, someplace in Damascus, we don't know that. So all the training was done away from the country. So we didn't know about the tunnels, but not about the amount of people and weapons that went in and out. And that was a big surprise. But there was more to the story, if I may. There was a buffer zone that goes about 300 yards from the fence. Now this is supposed to be a no man's land. Nobody's supposed to cross. Well, look at me for just a minute. You're just watching through your telescope a little kid, they're playing with the ball, he kicks the ball, look at me, and then the ball falls into the buffer zone. He just goes to pick up the ball and go back to play. Will you shoot him a bullet in the head? I'm asking you. Just a kid, huh? A mistake. And the following day, a shepherd is coming with the sheep, and about 10 of them are getting closer to the fence. And then he calls them, and he keeps going. Will you shoot the shepherd or the sheep? I don't think so. One thing leads to another. And then you wake up to this. Peaceful demonstrations are being sarcastic. There are burning tires covering the fence with smoke. And in the smoke, they crawl very closely to the fence, attach bombs from the inside mines, and everything is ready. Because we do not see, this is the pole, we see this part, not this part. And they are ready. By the way, the future solution that we are going to have a buffer zone, if the smallest kid will go over it, he'll get a bullet in the head. We learn our mistakes. And that's how it was done. Until October 7th of 2023, everything was ready. Now, the problem is that the writing was on the wall. We knew it was happening because our soldiers along the line could see that they are preparing something. You tell your commanding officer, who tells his commanding officer, who tells his commanding officer. By the time it gets to the politician's level, oh, don't even mention that. Hamas are friends. It's okay. We understand what they're doing. They're not going to dare. Well, they did. So that's how we were deceived, and I have to say, they did a great job in deceiving us, and that deception was working extremely well. It was the Feast of Tabernacles, the last day, the joy of the Torah, that's how we call it, Simchat Torah. I was walking the dog, 6:30 a.m., my phone rings, my daughter is on the phone. Now, she never calls me at 6:30, let alone on a holiday. And she's a news producer for the Israeli television. Dad, where are you at? Walking the dog, obviously. Well, go back home, 2,000 rockets are coming your way. That's how I knew about what was going on. You don't understand the shock. You don't understand the surprise. Nothing worked in Israel for the first 24 hours. Absolutely nothing. The army was not on alert. Civilians did not know what was going on. We have readiness squads in every community. They had to go to the armory to get the weapons because it wasn't in the home because the army is going to protect you. Don't worry. Many of them were killed on the way to the armory because those that infiltrated the communities knew exactly where the armories were. They worked there. They knew who the people are. They knew on what door to knock to take out the commander of every squad because they were friends until about a month ago. One of the oldest hostages in Gaza, 85 years old, Mr. Oded Lifshitz, had a mission. He was driving down to the border crossing every day to pick up people that came from Gaza and drive them to the Beersheba hospital and back home because they did not have the money to do that. He was the target. They knew exactly who he was. And now he's in Gaza. I hope that he's alive. There's no way to tell. The man is 85 years old. Bad nutrition, no sunlight for the last 120 days. We have no idea about the condition of our hostages, which is the most painful part of the story. So October 7th, as I mentioned, was a turning point. And as I said, nothing will ever be the same as it was before October 7th. The Israeli head of the Mossad, which is the Israeli CIA, made a statement every Palestinian mother should know. If her son participated in the 7th of October massacre, she can start mourning, we'll find him, we'll kill him. And I'm sorry for that, we mean business, we know exactly how to find them. We have the names of people, And each time we take out one of them, it's being published, we kill this one and this one, we'll get all of them. The neighborhood is watching, we have to deliver a message because the whole world is watching. And this can only end in one way. And I'm telling you, I know it's an unpleasant, in a way we are holding the front line between the Judeo-Christian world, if you wish, and principles and radical Islam. We are the only people to give a fight back. Not in European countries, not even here yet. So this is another way to view what happens in the Middle East. They went through our borders into 22 communities. There was a music festival. 4,000 people just went to sing and dance and just be happy. They became to be the main target. 400 of them were butchered right on the spot. Women raped, men beheaded, babies were baked in ovens, limbs were cut off. Again, it's just really hard to explain that, and I'm sparing the unpleasant details, right? I won't share it with you. But rescue workers told us, and this was quite amazing, they came closer to a big fire not knowing what's burning. They thought these are tires. Think about the number of vehicles that were just left behind, thousands of those. They get a little closer, they did not understand what was burning. Then they got very close to the fire, human bodies. Close to 200 bodies. Now you try to extract DNA from ashes, try to find the identity of these people. In the Jewish world, people have to be buried as quickly as possible. Even today, we have some people that are missing because we found absolutely nothing. When you see rescue workers using not weapons, but equipment used by archaeologists, just to sift the dust, to try to find a tooth, a piece of bone, something, to try to teach you who was this individual. Who behaves like that? We speak about evil, well, sheer evil. That's what we saw in that day. I hope I was able to convince you about Hamas and ISIS and the way that everything happened. They came in 3 waves, by the way. The first one were the commando forces. They broke through the fences, making the way for the others. And then, people from Gaza, simply people that heard that the wall is open, the wall is breached, and they came in with axes and scissors and knives and bicycles to steal and to loot and to plunder and to rape and to kill anybody in the area. Some of you may remember the phone call. A man is calling his dad. He just took a phone from a dead Israeli woman. Dad, your son is a hero. I killed 8 Jews with my very hands. And the dad is crying on the phone, keep killing my son. I'm so proud of you. I wish I was with you. Keep killing. Who educates his kids like that? That's what we are dealing with. Unfortunately, it's not just us. I was able to go to Kibbutz Be'eri, one of the communities that was hit the hardest, and that's how it looks like. All right? About 4 or 5 days. It was a house of a happy family. Mom, dad, and 3 kids. They were found murdered inside the house and set on fire. Green grass, beautiful flowers. Now multiply that in about 1,000 times and you get an idea of these communities, how they look like after this heinous attack of October 7th. For 24 hours, our communities were occupied. Our people were butchered. It will not happen again. We usually say in Israel, never again, speaking about the Holocaust. We have to add that as well. We say never again. That's what we mean now. Not a Holocaust, not anymore. As I said, 118 days. The hostages, which is the most painful part of the whole story, is what will happen with them. It started with 249. We were able to negotiate and they freed children, some of the elderly women, about 100. They took workers from Thailand and Nepal. Anybody that was working in the communities was a legitimate target to be a hostage. And today we have 136, 25 confirmed dead, and we'll see about the others. There was a psychological terror goes on as well. Hamas released a clip about 2 weeks ago, and it shows you 3 people, 2 men and a woman. And they say, this clip was taken a week ago. We'll show you tomorrow the condition today. Following day, 2 dead bodies and the woman standing. Whoever behaved like that in world history and was proud of it? So that will be the most painful part of the story, will be the hostages. The kids, God willing, are back in Israel in decent shape, except for these 2. This kid is 4 years old. Kfir celebrated his first birthday someplace in the tunnels of Hamas. He is the enemy of the Muslim world. Would you believe that? We have no idea about the condition Absolutely none. I'm reminding you that there are people in our prisons are treated more than royalty, unfortunately. We do keep the law. We do want to be part of the civilized world. I don't think that they share the same sentiments. We retaliated, obviously, and we sent our troops in a ground operation, opening a corridor for humanitarian reasons. People in Gaza were given 96 hours to take provisions and to rescue themselves and go down south, fired by Hamas not to leave their homes. Hamas wants them to stay in their homes, to use them as human shields. And again, it's escalated right now. Israel is occupying most of the Gaza area. Above ground, I have to say, underground, we're still working. And this will be today the main battle. And the last one will be Rafah. The Egyptians are very upset. Well, so be it. We have to control the border crossings into Sinai, even if we are colliding with Egypt. That will be a price to pay. That's where we are right now when it comes to the Gaza Strip. And again, maybe Gaza takes most of the attention. More to the story, give me 5 minutes. We'll bring that to conclusion with your permission. Are you still with me? All right? Well, let's carry on. When I said it's a global issue, well, I did mean that. Well, that's how Gaza looks like today. There are a couple of circles that we are confronting of enemies. I'll start with Lebanon. Since we are in Lebanon, let me start with Lebanon. Lebanon is governed by a militia called Hezbollah, which is here a state within a state, but today part of the Lebanese government. There was an exchange of fire goes on from the last 100 and something days. No maneuvers, nobody crosses borders, but a lot of damage was done. Israel has 130,000 refugees, Israelis, that left their homes and communities. Some of them don't have home to go to, those that came from the Gaza area. And the community is everything. Some of you know the term kibbutz. Kibbutz is all about a community. And these communities were moved as a community to hotels in the country. At least they tried to keep the communal way of life together. On the northern side, 70,000 people left their homes because the homes are being rocketed by Hezbollah. It's kind of a stupid game that we play. They fire at us, we fire back, we escalate, they escalate, nothing happens. One thing we know for sure, this will not be over until Hezbollah is either defeated or goes at least 20 miles up north. Diplomacy may work, it's not going to work unfortunately, it's going to be another round of fighting. We will not bring people back home knowing that at every given moment, somebody pulls the trigger, Israeli family is going to die. Won't happen again. And therefore, Hezbollah is another challenge. That's what we try to accomplish, right? To have this area that will be a Hezbollah-free area, and then, maybe then, Israelis will come back to take the homes which are in a bad condition. These are farmers. Think about livestock. Think about the picking season. Think about chickens and eggs and the whole thing. People have to sneak into the homes just to feed the cows and just to milk the cows. And whenever they find you from the other side, they shoot a rocket at you. Livestock is being killed as well. It sounds incredible that we'll tolerate such a situation. But we do. President Biden was asking specifically, wait with the full-scale operation there. You don't want to be engaged in two front lines. Give it some time for diplomacy. Not working. We try diplomacy. Once again, Israel will not live when terror entities are on our borders. Nobody should live like that. When the world says that Israel has a right to defend itself, thank you, a mouse has the right to defend itself. I want the world to understand that Israel has the right to take out its enemies. And we know who they are. If we get that recognition, that's a different story. But the world has two different scales, or bars if you wish, to measure Israel and the rest of the countries. The world always wants for us something they don't demand for themselves. All right? And this is not really fair, to say the least, and I don't want to call it in any other name. So we do have Lebanon, we do have the West Bank. Israel is fully exploiting the situation that the world's attention goes to Gaza, and meanwhile we are taking out Hamas's assets in the West Bank as well. See the area over there that happens to be our hometown, only about a mile away from Tulkarem. Machine gun fire, drones in the air, that's our daily lives. On the other side, of course. But it's an opportunity to destroy Hamas's assets in the West Bank as well, just like we do in Gaza. And if that's not enough, we have the outer circle. Houthis from Yemen, what exactly they've got to do with Israel, all right? Are firing their ballistic missiles. Yemen, one of the poorest countries in the world. Most of the people are illiterate, yet they have ballistic missiles. Guess what? They were not built in Yemen. Everything is coming from Iran, the mastermind of all the terror in the area. So the Houthis are firing the rockets. We have a rocket, a missile called the Arrow 3 that was intercepting all of them. First time in the world that a ballistic missile was intercepted by a countermeasure that was developed in Israel. Interesting, but all of Europe is freaking out from Russia during the war with Ukraine, and Europe is not protected. And they are going to buy this system from us to be deployed on German soil. Here was an irony of history. 8 years after the Holocaust, Jewish weapons are going to protect Germany. In Britain and Spain and France and all the others. Interesting. God works in mysterious way. Well, here's a nice example for you about working in mysterious ways. And we do speak about proxies of Iran which are deployed in Iraq. They fire more at American assets than they fire at Israel. And you take casualties, all right? American people, soldiers are getting killed as we speak in northern Iraq and Syria. And of course, Iran, that will be the outer circle. So you want to tell me it's a local, limited geographical area? I think that you understand. Much more global than we ever thought it's going to be. That's how we defend ourselves, and we know how to do that, as you understand. And once again, to share this amazing picture, which is absolutely amazing to see. That looks how nice it is, huh? Really looks very nice, like 4th of July. That will be the Iron Dome on one side, intercepting the rockets or the missiles of Hamas fired from the Gaza area on the other side. Well, that's a question that we need to answer, and I do not know how to answer that exactly, except for listen to the Palestinians, read the polls. The West Bank, I told you, 82% of Palestinians are supporting Hamas. Are they the future partners? Can we reason with them? Do we have a partner with Hamas? Because the big question is, after this war is over, what will happen in the Gaza Strip? Nobody has an answer. Nobody knows. Israel is not going to occupy Gaza. We want to have the overall security control, to come in whenever we need to take out assets that are working against us and go back home. Who is going to take care about education, sewage, community? Nobody wants to get involved in Gaza. Qatar can solve the problem. Money is not an issue. They have plenty of money. Nobody wants to. They want to leave Gaza as an offense, if you wish, as a problem constantly. Who cares about 2.2 million people? Definitely not the Arabs. They do nothing to help the people in Gaza. Zero, absolutely nothing. So who is going to control Gaza? How this is going to be resolved? Well, go figure. And you understand the frustration. Nobody has a good answer. We know one thing for sure. Never in the future we'll have a terror entity on our borders. That's not going to happen. Not because we want to teach them a lesson, but because we learn ours. It's not going to happen. So that's where we are right now. Israel mobilized, we mobilized 300,000 men. Many of them were released already. The war now is on a different intensity, but they'll be called back to finish the job over there. And of course, the big question is what will be the Israeli-Lebanese situation like? And I would like to leave you with this question because we cannot really answer and bring that to conclusion. With your permission, I'd like to screen or to project a song on the screen over there. Some of you may have seen that on YouTube. 1,000 Israeli musicians and the families of the hostages got together to the theater of Caesarea. All right, some of you have been to the theater of Caesarea, and they sang a song, not a new song in Israel. Basically, it's almost like a new national anthem that speaks about bring them home, basically, and the hope to come back home. It has subtitles as well. And I would like, with your permission, to bring that to an end by showing you that on the screen. Can we do that? I know. I'll try not to be in tears because usually that's the effect of this song, at least on me. you'll find this one. You don't understand how emotional it is. You don't understand how personal everything is. We're a small country. We all know people and their families. So thank you for your patience to watch that song. Folks, my presentation comes to an end. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'm here until tomorrow 8 a.m. to answer questions. So please, take the time, think about your question. It takes the first one, then it will run, I'm sure, right? Usually the first one will be the first courageous one to ask a question.
So we have a mic because we have online streaming tonight. So if you have a question, you will need to use a mic tonight. So we'll start with one here.
Do you think what's happened in Israel is all part of a prophecy in the Bible?
Well, so that's theology, and I don't do theology. I'm sure that Pastor Dwayne may have an answer for you. I prefer not to go there, but the answer is yes.
I have like 10 questions, but how do the people feel about what the United States has been doing and not doing, and other countries not coming alongside? Really, they're kind of putting a lot of pressure on you?
Well, number one, I forgot to mention earlier, the level of solidarity in Israel is second to none. You have no idea. Everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to contribute. I'll answer your question in just a minute, all right? When the war started, Israelis from all around the world, people had their jobs in places, Silicon Valley. There are many Israelis. People traveled around the world. You try to catch the first plane possible to come back home to fight for your country. So there was a shortage for everything. The way that the army plans is for about 80% of the people show up in emergency. So you don't have enough weapons, ammunition, 120% showed up. So this was a good sign about this level of solidarity and help. That was very encouraging. To answer your question, this is a little minefield for me. It's an election year in America, needless to say, and I try not to go there. And I do know the controversy in the US. Let me be selfish in that regard to say the following. President Biden is a friend of Israel. That's the way that we see that. I know that there are different opinions about that, but no president ever called himself a Zionist, and he did. And he made some speeches which are music to our ears. I know there was a difference between making the speeches and stand up behind your word, etc. So far, we have no reason to complain, so far. I do understand that things may change, and the closer the presidential elections are coming, and the pressure from within the Democratic Party will grow on the president, he may change some of his positions, but so far the U.S. is 100% behind Israel. That's how we feel, with some reservations, I have to say, because the U.S. wants Israel to fight as a democracy. And if you try to check what that is, what country in the past fought as a democracy? Not you in Iraq, I have to say, not the British in Afghanistan. What do you mean to fight democracy? And there was a list, all right? Number one, you cannot tell people to leave their homes because it looks like you're exiling people and you're going to make them refugees. Number two, minimize collateral damage. Number three, keep sending food inside. Although Hamas leaves everything, keep doing that and do it fast. No army in the world can deliver those needs. And that's what we are requested to do. And I don't think that any army can do that. But until now, I have to say that we have no complaints about the way that the U.S. supports us. And man, presidents come and go. As long as the majority of American people is pro-Israeli, we are content. All right, so that will be to answer that part of the question. Any other questions about American politics?
It just seems even from his speech originally that there was a pressure to come to terms, like, what's the word? Negotiations with them.
There is such a pressure.
Recognizing that they're terrorists. And we didn't negotiate with terrorists when it happened at 9/11. And so I was just curious. That's why I was surprised that you said that Israel feels like they're supported by President Biden.
Yes. To speak about terrorists, Hamas is recognized as a terror group by the U.S., by the whole EU, by Egypt, by Jordan, by Syria. Egypt is recognizing Hamas as a terror entity, all right, officially. Not by Turkey, by the way, member of NATO. But all the world, all the civilized world, all right, recognizes Hamas as a terror entity. Nobody wants to make peace with Hamas. The question is, how do you save lives on the other side? And who is Hamas and who is not? and we need to protect lives on the other, which I agree. But again, what makes the difference? If you hold a rifle, you're a terrorist. If you hide it someplace, you're a civilian. Who can tell the difference? Then you go back home to pick up the rifle that you hid, you're a terrorist once again. Who can follow? Who is one and who is not? That's our problem. All right? But listen, Germany is the closest ally of Israel. Amazing. Germany from all countries in Europe. And then Britain. I don't care about the millions demonstrating in the streets of London. That's a European problem. I care about governments. Governments in the world are supporting Israel, and right, everybody wants to destroy Hamas. Everybody. Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan. Hamas is a risk to the whole region. But for the Arabs, number one, show solidarity. If you say that, the mobs in your streets will turn down the government. So they can say it loud and clear. Behind closed doors, nobody wants Hamas to stay in power in the Gaza Strip. I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
What we see in the news is what I'm going to talk about. I don't know how true it is. Y'all are taking a lot of Hamas as prisoners, and they're demanding negotiations about them being released. That's not going to happen, is it?
Well, there are two things to consider here. Number one, we have in our prisons already about 6,000 convicted, right? Convicted terrorists. Many are PLO, many Hamas, many Islamic Jihad, and many other groups. Right now, one of the proposals on the table is that Israel is going to free many of them for all the hostages. The key is going to be one of ours and 150 of theirs. That's what they want. They want the complete cessation of the war, and Israel pulls out from Gaza. That's not going to happen. Exchange of prisoners, I guess we are going to one way or the other. The last time we did, the key was 1 to 3. Every one of us, they got 3 of theirs, but people that did not have blood on their hands, so to speak. That's the main issue. What will happen to the hostages and how flexible Israel is willing to be and how far we're willing to go to release the hostages. And I have to tell you that we are divided into two. Many Israelis will not pay the price. Many will say that if you're going to release all of them and stop the war now, then the Israeli casualties were in vain. Others will say that human lives are most important than anything else. We want these civilians back home. And we can always go back to war and finish them up. I don't know if that's the case. We are divided on that issue, even the government. And if Mr. Netanyahu is going to complete the process, he doesn't have a government. In his government, about a third do not agree to carry on that deal that we are going to release thousands of terrorists, all right, for the 136 that we have. Looks like a dead end. It's going to be a tough decision to make. I don't envy our decision makers. Sure.
What would be different if the hostages weren't still hostages? What if you found out they were all dead? Or what if they were returned? Or what if they didn't exist in the first place? Would Israel flood the tunnels with the Mediterranean Sea and cut off all aid to Gaza to get this over with?
We can cut off all aid. If you want to have the support of the Western world or so, there's a few things that we need to do, all right, including sending food inside, flood the tunnels. We started. That's part of the question. Israel will not behave like a barbaric army, all right, like some armies do. We don't. But you need to know that in army headquarters, when the airstrike started in Gaza, every panel has a lawyer, that expert in international law. Every target has to have his approval. It's not the Air Force commander and not the F-16 pilot. It's the lawyer. So give me the evidence that this house is a target. Every house has a file. So we're taking our assets that we can prove, because the question is, they're going to take you to Hague. The criminal court, international, they're going to accuse you for genocide. You have to be prepared. Once you're inside Gaza, they fire at you from a house. The house is a target. But everything had to be done by a certain protocol that no army in the world ever fought by these standards. Nobody did. We do. On the other hand, you don't just flood the tunnels. Somebody told me once, you need to nuke Gaza. I didn't know the term nuke until I just went to check what nuke means. We don't behave like that. We don't behave like that. We try to separate terrorists from innocent civilians. I have no idea how to do that. Let's say that you never pull the trigger of anything, but you're giving Hamas a donation every month. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? You understand my point? There's much confusion where to draw the line, and we don't know where to draw the line. And therefore, you go into Gaza, somebody fires at you from a house, the house will be taken out. From a tunnel, tunnel is gone. But we don't just take out assets because we want to. In one case, a soldier just wrote a graffiti. We are back. He was court-martialed. We don't behave like that. And we are really, really angry, trust me. We are really furious. And we need to restrain ourselves not to be barbaric like they are, which is not easy. Sometimes, your fuse is so short and your blood is boiling. You just want to go in and kill. It's very careful not to do that. Civilized nations don't respond like that. And we are a civilized nation, regardless of what they say about us.
I know you had to say what you said about Joe Biden, but the modern Democrat Party is not a friend of Israel.
I agree.
And we know that.
I agree. Some elements, they call them progressive, I would say regressive. They're not friends of Israel, not at all.
Yeah, could you speak to this article here in the last day or so? Biden issued an executive order that aims to punish Israeli settlers who have been attacking Palestinians in the occupied West Bank.
What can I say about that? As I said, we are working in the West Bank as well, and all the attention goes to Gaza. And again, that's something easy to say. I don't think that anybody knows the facts. Problem is that some of the Arabs in the West Bank have American citizenship. Actually, quite a lot. And that's the main concern of the president, all right? American citizens that live in the Gaza, in the West Bank area. But, they criticize us all the time for what we do in that area. Israel is also criticizing some of the settlers for behaving in such a way because they exploit the situation as well. So our troops, instead of working against Hamas in the West Bank, we need to police those settlers not to go and just cut off orchards of olive trees for Palestinians because it's the harvest time and we just want to show them who are the masters of the land, which happens as well. So I do understand that. I don't want to make any comments on that because, again, it's not my field of expertise, American policy in the Middle East.
I have two questions. One, when we return to Jerusalem, will you be our tour guide?
Well, that's the plan, right, Pastor Dwayne? Yes, ma'am.
And the second one is, during my time in Qatar with the United States Marine Corps, we have army bases that are currently in Qatar. Are the U.S. forces in Qatar and Israeli intelligence working together in regards to Qatar's support to the Gaza Strip?
I have no inside information. I'm not an Israeli official, and nobody asks my advice anymore. I never did, by the way, so I really don't know how to answer that. I do know that the money that Qatar sent into the Gaza Strip area, at least the legal parts of it, was done without support. People carried briefcases full of dollars, right, in a truck through Israel's territory, coming from Jordan. So we knew about it. The big money came in a different way that we did not know about, and that's what went for the tunnels. So I do not know about any cooperation. I'm just not that updated in information, and I have no inside information. I never had, by the way. Anybody else? Yes,
Was
sir.
that the right-wing party or the left-wing party in that concert?
I'm sorry, left wing?
Was that the left-wing party with that concert, or was that the right-wing party in Jerusalem?
The concert?
Yes,
You mean the music festival?
in Caesarea.
No, that was the 1,000 musicians.
So are you pro-right-wing or pro-left-wing in Israel right now?
Am I pro?
No, is the country.
Please ask me again.
Is the country more liberal now, or is it more?
Oh, okay. I guess it's safe to say that right now the country is moving more to the anti-coexistence with the Palestinians, and I don't want to call it right or left because it's not divided in such a way. All right, so the country now is much more militant. Is it going to stay like that? If you want to say militant equals conservative, I'm not sure. But the country is more militant in that approach that there's no hope, there is no coexistence. Is it going to change in the future? Possibly. Right now, we are still so much caught in the events that right now the blood is really boiling. We just want to Finish them up once and for all, and then we'll go back to the old discussions and the old arguments. You know what they say about the Jewish people? Wherever you find two Jews, you'll find three opinions. And that's going to be the same situation. I can joke about Jews. It's fine.
Thanks. I don't want to hog the mic, but okay. I have a lot of questions. Oh, so why do you think parts of the video from October 7th haven't been shown in our country? I don't know if they've been shown in other countries, because I think it would help people realize that it's not like an army versus an army. It's an army versus terrorists.
But if people did not realize that so far, with what was released, we have a major problem. Trust me, parts of it you don't want to be released. All right? There's a limit how graphic somebody wants to be. The Israeli, the government, Israeli, or the spokesman of the army, made an edited movie of 47 minutes, where I just showed those GoPro cameras, bite by bite, piece by piece. That's all they did. It's horrible. I did not see it, but based on what I saw, you don't want to see it.
So why would the Palestinians want to vote for Hamas again when they don't have any rights and they're not treated well?
Well, because the only ambition is to kill Jews. You ask me a question that comes from a decent Western common sense perspective. I want to vote somebody that will make my life better. No, I want to vote somebody that will promise me to kill the Jews. Doesn't make sense, huh? That's exactly it. People knew what they're voting for. Hamas has a charter. They don't hide their intentions. It's more important to kill Jews. You hear it from Palestinian mothers. I'm so happy to sacrifice 10 more of my kids just to kill one Jew. What mother speaks like that? You don't have to release those movies. It's enough to listen to them. Who thinks like that? They do. I'm not being biased. Listen to them. They say it all the time.
I just have one more quick one. So the people that are still missing are considered missing. How do you know they haven't been one of the kidnapped people that you don't know about?
We don't know. Well, we only basically now, after more than 100 days, we only have one, all right, that we have no clue what happened to her, a soldier. We found absolutely nothing, but it took a long time to identify the others. You see, they started with, we have 249 kidnapped or hostages. Then you start checking, and the family reports about somebody who is missing. You go through the list of DNA that you extracted from remaining bodies, and it's not on the list. So conclusion will be, well, he's not here, has to be a hostage. But then you realize that he's not even a hostage because we don't know who is a hostage. They will not release the names. We have no clue. So right now, based on what we think, but it's just an opinion, it's a thought. We have one who is missing. All the other identified one way or the other. How many of them are alive? You can't tell. So the numbers are changing constantly. And we are confused as well. The army spokesman can say, well, we have 125 people kidnapped. Yesterday you said 138. Yes, but we identified the remains of a few other bodies, so they're off the list of the hostages. It changes every day. That's a horrible part. Think about the families, all right? Where is my daughter? Where's my dad? Is he dead? We need to bury him? Is he a hostage? You don't know.
Just thinking, I don't know how to form the question, but my question has to do with Iran, what to do with them, where Israel stands on taking them out, or the risk of them having a nuclear capability. Can you speak to that?
An opinion, just an opinion, because again, I don't have any facts to prove that. When historians are going to write down the history of the 21st century, they will say the following. The 21st century was typified by a war of religion. The trigger was the Twin Towers, 9/11. Battle number 1 was taking out ISIS. Number 2, to defeat Hamas. Number 3, the destruction of nuclear Iran. It looks like it's going to that direction. Iran will have nuclear weapons. It's not our choice anymore. Regardless of President Biden says or Mr. Netanyahu, Iran will have nuclear weapons. And the question is not where's the weapon, who is protected from the weapon. Think about the following scenario, a question in philosophy, not in warfare, okay? Let's say that Iran has the weapon, and somebody decides to fire a rocket at Israel. We intercept it. The arrow intercepts it out of the atmosphere, no radioactive foliage, no damage was done, but they fired a nuclear rocket. Do we have the right to respond with our nuclear weapons that we never admitted that we have? knowing that they are not protected and hundreds of thousands of Iranians will be killed. What say you? You understand the problem? All right, so it's a problem of philosophy more than it is a problem of warfare. But if it comes to that, we still think that most of Iranians want to live in peace with the West. It's just a matter of the regime, maybe a coup in the near future. I think that that's a hope that many people have. Because if it's not going to happen, that requires some solution. And it won't be a peaceful one, unfortunately. And we are waiting. Time is not in our favor. We could have done that with Gaza 20 years ago, with minimum casualties on both sides, and destroy Hamas, and it was still young and easy to destroy. We thought it's an asset, and we grew a monster. Same with Iran. So we'll see. Time will tell. Amen to that. But it may get to that. As we know how the book ends, right? Just the timing is in God's hands, so we don't know the timing.
I think I read, excuse me, a long time ago where when an Israeli soldier is kind of going to be brought into the military, they go to Masada. They have that, ceremony where if we go down, everyone's going down. Something like that. Like they're not going to give up. You know the question I'm kind of asking? Is that for real or?
Let me rephrase your question, okay?
Yeah, thanks.
The slogan is Masada shall never fall again. Masada shall never fall again. But in order to explain that, I need to give an hour of a lecture, which I'm not going to. Masada is a national symbol. Masada was the last stronghold of the Jewish zealot that decided to die as free people and took their own lives and not to be slaves of Rome. So that's the symbol behind Masada. Masada shall never fall again. Until the mid-70s, it was true that every soldier that joined boot camp and was sworn in on top of Masada. That was the slogan. He was getting his rifle and his Bible. The idea is that your rifle will protect the Bible will guide you how to use the rifle. That's the symbolism, every soldier. And the end was Masada shall never fall again. Masada stands for the state of Israel. Not anymore today. Today, every unit has its memorial site for its casualties. In most cases, they will do the ceremony in the memorial site, not in Masada anymore. But some will do. Israeli kids have their bar mitzvah. The Jewish boys come into an Eid ceremony. They can do it on Masada. You have the Alamo, we have Masada, not the same. So Masada serves as a message, as a purpose, but the slogan is Masada shall never fall again. You're welcome.
What impact has this had on the economy in Israel?
Well, we took a hit, as you understand, especially the tourist industry, the tourists. Yeah, there are no tourists in the country. We took a hit. We speak about the farming season. Many of the farms are not attended, and it's hard to harvest the fields once again when somebody is firing rockets at you. Today, the war is on a different intensity, so many of the reservists were released to go back home because of the economy. They'll be called back to reserve duty near future, but all things considered, we're holding on not bad. All right, not bad. Israel has a strong economy, one of the 10 strongest economies in the world, and we can take such a hit. The problem is that the government is really malfunctioning. You look at the budget for the next year, they don't really care. For them, nothing happened. It's all to try to maintain the coalition, which means money goes to the wrong direction, to the wrong purposes. That's another reason for us to take to the streets. We won't have it. All right, coalitions are important. Unlike in America, it's a different system in my country. You have to form a coalition, and you bribe people to join the coalition. You bribe them with money. All right, and that money is needed now for hospitals, education, fields, building houses. The money is needed. The government looks like they operate like everything is as normal. So that's another thing that we do not understand. We are recovering from it. And the economy can take a hit, but again, we recover quickly. They call us a startup nation, and there is a reason for that, and we are strong with our economy. And the last question. How about that?
Anyone else? Last question. Going.
Okay, I watch the Israel news on my television, and I've heard it reported that the Red Cross had the ability to go in, get permission from Hamas to get a list of the hostages along with delivering needed medications, because a lot of the older people take medications. And that I also saw a segment in France as soon as the posters were made of the hostages at one of the headquarters, Red Cross headquarters in France. Those posters were being torn down. So is it that the Red Cross is refusing to go in to check on the hostages? Or do you know if it's because Hamas won't let them?
Well, the posters and the Red Cross are not really connected. Posters were turned down in Washington, D.C. as well, and New York and everywhere. All right, so it's not something that only happened in France. But the Red Cross, well, they were supposed to do the jobs. At least check with Hamas. They didn't even check. Well, Hamas won't let them. That's obvious. That's a weapon they're using. But at least you can go and check. That's your job, for goodness sake. Bring the medications to them. They refuse to take medications. No, you take them, all right? Just play the game, okay? Thank you. I'm going to give it to Hamas. They don't even do that. So recently they did. Did they get to their destination? No one knows. We enter trucks of whatever they need to the other side, stolen by Hamas, obviously, not for the common people. We have no clue if what we send in got to their destination. We just don't know. And it's only 5 miles away from home. That's it, right here, next door. You don't have a clue. Pastor Dwayne.
That's right. Let's thank Ronnie for the presentation.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. We will be going to Israel in December as of now. Our tour in December of this year is still on. If things change between now and then, obviously that'll affect that. But as of now, we are still planning that. Information for our tour is in the back and the information booth. We have flyers there if you're interested. We are scheduled to be with Ronnie again this year. Again, should everything stay as is now. So please check out that information. Ronnie also has a website. Is that still up in the...
Yeah, but I didn't prepare for that. Folks, may I?
Sure.
If anybody's interested in that kind of information, you want to know more about the country, you want to know more about the land of Israel, Bible, etc., this is second best for me, by the way. I prefer to teach Bible, all right? Teach Bible and history. That's what I do the best. This is just because of people's interest. I'm asking you to go to the website. I hope that you will enjoy what you see. Very simple. thegalileeacademy.com. The Galilee Academy. Lots of information about the country. Some of it you need to subscribe, but most of it is free. And I think that you'll enjoy to see updates about what happens in Israel, virtual tour through the country, etc. If you're interested in that topic and you want to hear our perspective, don't hesitate. The Galilee Academy, very simple. And you can email me, you can email my colleague and my partner.
The Galilee Academy.
One word, thegalileeacademy.com. Galilee like Galilee, Academy like Academy, thegalileeacademy.com. No, thank you.
Yeah. All right, let me pray and then we'll finish up. Father, thank you for tonight and just hearing the perspective of Ronnie from Israel. Lord, we know that war saddens you. We know, God, that your desire is for all people to know you and to see you, to trust in you, to know that you are a God that can be and is their Father. So, Lord, we pray for peace. We pray for resolution where there doesn't seem to be resolution. We ask, God, that you would provide a pathway forward through this. We pray, Lord, that Christians would stay unified and stay informed. And we commit this to you. In Jesus' name, amen.